particularly sexual abuse and also bullying, whether in the community, at home, or in the school setup. It's not very different from what we are seeing among our adolescents and early adults. There's also, you can talk about issues related to unwanted pregnancy, particularly among our young girls and women. Of course, the abuse is there as well, the sexual abuse and the others. Okay. But one thing I want to emphasize, which is troubling for us, is the, please go back for me one bit, is the problem of child marriage. We are beginning to see a lot of cases like that in our data. Then, when it comes to sexual abuse, particularly among our adolescents, we are also beginning to see a lot of incest. Fathers, uncles, significant other adult males in the family sexually abusing girls in the family. It's becoming a big issue for us. Next, among our general adults, we have issues related to unemployment, financial issues, and then some of our adults who are in the services, and here I mean those in the police, in the military, those doing jobs that will not allow them to do a secondary job. We are seeing that people or some workers defy those directives given to them by their employers, whether government or private persons, and they engage in other things. And in those circles, they also call it galamsey, even though it's not the galamsey we know, like doing a multiple job. And we are seeing that among the police to be moonlighting. A lot of that is happening. And those officers who are engaged in things like that tend to be vulnerable to suicidal issues. Then among our older adults, we are seeing a lot in terms of isolation. It looks like as a society, we are beginning to neglect them. We are seeing grief and loss. Obviously, by that age, you'll be losing a lot of significant others, wives, husbands, children, friends, and so on. And so there is loneliness. What is happening, and we find it troubling, is also related to elder abuse. And I imagine all of us at least have some knowledge about one story or other related to some older people being abused in their families. But generally across the population, I mean, regardless of age, we are seeing some common factors. So whether children, adolescents, early adults, or general adults, or older adult population, these factors run through. For example, untreated mental health problems or disorders, depression, anxiety, chronic stress. If you don't attend to these things, eventually they can be problematic. Then persons who have ever attempted suicide, as I said in the beginning, previous suicide attempts represents a key risk for suicidal death in the future. Then we can have persons who have also had suicide happening in their families. They also are at a risk. Then alcohol and substance use and abuse. Alcohol, for example, is problematic because of the recreational nature we see it to have. Now, when somebody takes alcohol, assuming the person is experiencing depression, what happens is that the alcohol will distort the natural cause of the resolution process, of the depression. And when that happens, you can experience a lot of emotional distortions and things like that, including how you think. And in the end, it worsens the depression, and that can plunge you into suicidal thoughts. Of course, substance use and abuse and so on. So what challenges are we seeing, or have we gone through, or are we experiencing conducting research on suicide and suicidal behaviors in Ghana? There are several of them, but I just want to mention two key challenges. One is the stigma, and our suspicion from our data is that it could be because of the law. Now, the law criminalizes the behavior, and that inadvertently raises or intensifies the stigma. We know here that if somebody is missing and they announce on the radio, quickly families will go take the person. But assuming we hear that somebody has hanged him or herself somewhere, not too many families will be happy to go and say we want to take the person. One, they are afraid that they may be arrested. Two, the stigma around it. Generally, the law has been non-supportive. In fact, we are seeing in our research also that it has what we call an ionic effect. So it says that if you attempt suicide, essentially what it's saying is that if you attempt suicide and you don't die, we'll arrest you. We'll try you. If we find you guilty, we'll jail you. So in another angle, what it means is that if you want to die, make sure you die. In fact, we were surprised when we were analyzing the data from our MPs. One of them shared a story. According to him, somebody was once arrested, a farmer who was owing 500 Ghana cedis. He attempted suicide because he couldn't. He was also going through family issues, experiencing wifely infidelity and so on. He was arrested, taken to court. Eventually, when all was said and done, he was charged 5,000 Ghana cedis. This is not me talking. It was an MP who shared that story. And so it means that the law is so insensitive. Basically, that's it. Our hope is that the government of Ghana will consider this call to repeal the law and rather invest and try to expand our mental health infrastructure and open access to people who need help to access that help. Next is the lack of funding. Because we don't have much time, I'm unable to share in detail some of the things we've done. But you can see in just this quick snapshot that there's a lot that have been going on. But I can tell you that over the period, we've not had much support by way of funding for our research. Research is money. It is expensive. But in our circles, when you come to the Department of Psychology here on Legon campus or the Center for Suicide and Violence Research, also based in the department, we always do a lot with very little. I can tell you that there have been times we have received support of, say, 5,000 or 3,000. We do a study, and we are able to also conduct some training for the key persons involved. And so we can do a lot, but unfortunately, we don't get that much support. In fact, there have been times, for some time now, close to 5 or 7 years, we've not been able to do that much as we used to do because we always have to do out-of-pocket funding. How much are lecturers paid, and then we have to contribute that money to do such a huge thing. Now, going forward, we are hopeful that the law will be repealed, and then when that is done, it will pave the way for a lot of things which are positive to happen. One is that our plan is to establish and maintain a surveillance and monitoring system. And here I mean like a national database. The data we have from the Ghana Health Service is somewhat difficult to interpret because the cases are reported and they will just write attempted suicide 1, attempted suicide 10. So just the numbers. It's so difficult to interpret. That one person, is he a male, female, what was the age, where? There is nothing about it anymore, you see. And so we really need experts who will help to build that kind of database, to work in collaboration with the Ghana Health Service and also within our community setup so we can gather data that can help us understand the extent of the problem and develop interventions. On our part, we're also looking forward to conducting much more robust studies into interventions. So we're targeting schools, we're targeting workplaces, because today, workplace mental health is a big issue on the radar, and WHO is beginning to make noise about it. So things like that. And also, it will shock you that you go to our senior high schools, even our universities, and we don't have mental health policies. Not just for students, but workers as well. Our hope is that when we conduct such studies, we'll be able to build and develop clinical guidelines. Our medical doctors, you go and talk to them, so many years of work, and there is no document to follow. You talk about HIV, they have something to fall on. You talk about malaria, they have something to fall on. But suicide or attempted suicide, and they have no idea. Somebody comes in and they say, oh, or he or she says, I've attempted suicide. The medical doctor has no clue what to do, where to start from. You can't blame them because we need evidence-based protocols they can follow. Our hope is that when we have the law repealed and you help us to get some support by way of funding, we'll be able to get this far. And there are lots on our table we want to do. Finally, I want to repeat that there can be no health without mental health. And suicide prevention is everyone's business. It's not just us, the researchers, or the medical doctors, or the professionals, all of us. If you can't do anything at all, just empathically listen to the person, and that will go a long way to relieve them of their acute stress. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hello. Thank you very much, Dr. Neboy Kwashi. That was a great presentation. Let's give him a round of applause again. And those were serious revelations of suicide and attempted suicide in Ghana. Just yesterday, I was in one of the secondary schools, and the information shared by some of these young girls was amazing, what they are going through. And everybody is helpless, like we don't know what to do for them. And they are there. There are no guidelines. There's nothing to help them. Some of them were even crying because they are going through mental health challenges and there are no people to help them. We hope that as we go through this, we will take a key from all these and then be able to support our younger ones so that they don't go through these problems. Before we go on a break, we would call on Professor Joseph Osafo. He is a professor of psychology, the head of department for psychology. He is also a leading suicidologist in Ghana, and he's done a lot on suicide, and he's going to tell us about suicide prevention efforts in Ghana. Shall we welcome Professor Joseph Osafo?
Let me start off by making a few acknowledgements. And because we want those online to benefit from what we're doing, I'll be doing two things here. One of them is to help our colleagues who are joining online to be able to hear what we are doing here. And so a few acknowledgements. We want to acknowledge our sponsors. And I want to mention, first and foremost, Juspon Group of Companies. And then put your hands together for them. Yes. I also want to acknowledge Child Rights International. Child Rights, let's give it up, let's give it up. You know, Child Rights International is, they do a lot of work on children, and they are very happy to be part of what we are doing, and so they deserve an applause. In fact, they supported what we are doing. I also want to acknowledge Compassion International Ghana. Do we have their rep here? They are not yet here. They had another program, but they promised we're going to be here. Shall we acknowledge them as well? I also want to acknowledge family prayer group. By the time family prayer group is joining in this fight, your guess should be as good as mine. That this is indeed, just as Dr. Niboye Kwashi ended, suicide prevention is everybody's business. That it means that people really have taken this seriously. So we want to acknowledge all of them. I want to, in the next few minutes, because a lot of the things that are here equally, part of them have been shared by Dr. Kwashi. And so I'm just going to be taking it through what we've been doing a couple of years now, especially when it comes to prevention. Now, our philosophy at the Center of Suicide and Violence Research and at the Department of Psychology rests on two cardinal points. One is that we need data. But two, data on suicide is useless unless the data is used in guiding prevention. See, when it comes to suicide, it's not just about we gathering the data as we have shared with you. We can gather the data and it will sit on our shelves and there will not be any use of it. We believe that the data must drive action. And these are the two cardinal points on which our work on suicide prevention rests. That get good data and let the data drive action. And that is what we call evidence-based suicide prevention. And so we just want to show you from data to prevention. So we have the data, we have gathered the data, and just as he showed you, you saw that a number of our children, in fact, the current data we're working on over 10,000 university students, you saw that almost 3 out of 10 university students are contemplating suicide, and some have even attempted. And in those who are older adults, almost 50%. That's quite serious. Now, what that means is that it is not enough to just know about this, but what to do. And we just want to show you what we have been doing in the past 15 years. What have we been doing until now? So we started off by, okay, please watch me, okay? We started off by first trying to understand what the context says. By context, we mean our own culture, we mean our own ideas, our own thoughts as Ghanaians. What and how do we understand suicide, and how do we react, and how do we respond to people who are suicidal? And so we were first interested in understanding what this is all about, instead of just coming out with, estimates and data and all of those. And so we took a more of an interpretive approach, where we wanted to understand what is happening there, what you would call the qualitative approach. And our interest was on meanings. So if somebody wanted to die, what does it mean for somebody to want to die in Ghana? What does it mean for a man to be suicidal in Ghana? What does it mean for a woman to be suicidal in Ghana? What does it mean for a man who has lost his potency to be suicidal in Ghana? And what does it mean for a woman who is struggling with fertility to be suicidal in Ghana? These are critical contextual issues that should drive what we do. And so a lot of depictions and attitudes that we have about suicide in every culture will influence and affect the way we respond. For example, if you look at suicide in India, it's more of culture is more of a duty suicide, where a woman who might have lost a husband may want to kill herself, in honor, or immolate herself in honor of the husband. And so may, for example, offer herself to be burnt at the funeral pyre of the husband. I mean, that's very common in traditional India, for example, in Hindu culture. For example, if it comes to honor culture, if you have heard about the harakiri among the Japanese, a Japanese man will want to kill himself as a way of speaking to you about his honor. Okay? Yes. And so disembowelment, where he would just cut open his tummy to allow all the entrails to come out, just to tell you that I am a man of honor and I stand by my word. And again, the political protests, suicide protests in the Middle East, for example, suicide bombers, all of these are cultural depictions of suicide. How about Ghana? I'll tell you how we equally depict suicide, which influence our attitudes towards suicide. And not only that, but our readiness to, for example, intervene. So our research was generally attitude-based, and he's already gone through some of this. These are just historiography of some of the studies that he had already gone through, some of them that we saw in Ghana. But I just want to give you three of our attitude studies and how they have unearthed cultural depictions which reflect why we are struggling in Ghana currently in preventing suicide, and why it is important for you and I who are interested to join us, GASP, which we are launching today, to do this and support our honorable members who have really done so well to be taking this step in saying that let us take this out of our books and rather replace that with support. So the first study was from my thesis at the time, where the interest was trying to understand from various group of persons what suicide is all about. So lay persons, psychology students who are in training, professional groups, for example, nurses, psychologists, and medical doctors, and all of those. And what was interesting was that we found that attitudes towards suicide was in transition. It was moving from strong moral condemnation of looking at the person as evil, bad, satanic, devilish, a taboo behavior, something for which reason you have to be condemned and criminalized. But that was moving from that particular attitude set to a new set of attitude, which we call health crisis. That people were beginning to think and to see and to know that this is not just a moral issue, this is also a health issue. And that's where we wanted people to move away to. So the transitioning from that moral space into a more health space where they understand that people need support. And so we saw that the attitudes were in transition from morality to health crisis, and that those leaning on the morality were very condemnatory. In fact, if you ask somebody and he responded, suicide is evil, you could predict the next answer to the next question, which is, should we keep the law that criminalizes suicide? The person will say, yes. Once the person said that it is bad, they are likely, about 99%, are likely to say, yes, let's criminalize it. But if they said that, well, I think that is a health issue, they are likely to say, let's put in place support systems. What that means is that we have what we call transited attitudes. So attitudes that have moved from a moral condemnation to a health state, or attitudes that are very stable. They are unbendable, unmalleable. They are the same. In a kind of say, they won't change their mind. Suicide is bad, so anybody who engages in it, condemn them. Suicide is bad, and so let the parliamentarians keep the law to check them. Right. Then the second study, we moved from the attitudes and went into the homes. Now let's assume, and this is just an illustration, that 5 of us here have our wards or loved ones engaging in this behavior. And then the thing comes closer to you. Oh, you are told that your daughter, your lover, your husband, your wife, God forbid, is engaging or has engaged in this behavior. So we went to families where suicides have occurred. And also persons who have actually attempted suicide and were receiving treatment. And then persons who have attempted suicide and living in communities. I remember one of the communities that we did a training, the gentleman told me a story. Then I was there with Dr. Anthony Andoata. He said, when I engaged in suicide, the kind of beatings I received were more than actually what drove me into engaging in the behavior. He was beaten and dragged on the principal street of the village. In fact, that young man didn't make it. A month after, the chief called me and said he killed himself because they kept on taunting him and making him feel so bad. So we had interviewed those who are receiving treatment at the hospital. Professor Kotia led that study. One of our master students had also studied those who were living with their parents and have attempted. And when we take a break, we have our papers outside. I'd like you to just spend just a minute and look at our works. You'll be surprised of some of the findings in there. And I really encourage you to if you want some of them soft copies, don't worry. Just alert those at the table who attended to you, who will send copies to you to read for your own education and subsequent education in your communities and families. Families didn't want them. A mother will tell a son, because you did this, you have tainted our family with dishonor. We don't like you. And then those in the community, like I told you, who were beaten, and so they didn't want to be a part. In fact, they wished that they did not live. So we saw that there was a dynamic relationship between people's psychological state and negative life events. For example, lack of support, like Dr. Kwashi mentioned, abandonment, shame, existential struggles, domestic abuse, sense of loss, romantic tensions, social taunting, hopelessness. These psychological states were actually exacerbated by certain negative life events. They didn't feel like they were loved or they had lost something. And so existential struggles were seriously driving these behaviors in Ghana. And then the third example is from the study of Dr. Johnny Ando-Arta. And this is one of the seminal studies on suicide amongst men. Every man in this room, you are at risk. And so if you are married and you are here, please, your husband is at risk. And if you have a boyfriend, your boyfriend is at risk. If you have a son, your son is at risk. Dr. Ando-Arta's study is a study that was looking at dissidents, those who have died. And we're trying to reconstruct what actually happened. Of course, there could be some misapplied reasons for why they engage in suicide. But I can tell you, that study was a thoroughly done study. And he came out with deficiencies connected to what the study found to be what he called the 3P masculinity norms in Ghana, which affected men's suicide. That men felt pressured to provide materially. They felt stressed to perform sexually. And they felt pressured also to produce children. And these 3 P's, coupled with the use of substance, pushed a lot of men to engage in suicide, and they died. And in Ghana, the lethality rate for men who engage in suicide is really high because they use very lethal methods, like guns, okay, like a ligature, using a noose, to hang themselves. So men who died my sister in Ghana seem to have used suicide to escape from shame resulting from masculine deficiencies. And currently, we're losing a lot of people are losing jobs in Ghana. So please keep an eye on your husband. Very important. And so, by our theory and methods, we were seeing that attitude towards suicide and gleaning through the meanings, we're seeing, for example, people's negative attitude towards suicide was as a result of the consequences that they saw suicide meting out to persons who engage in this, especially for their families, and then also that they also saw that the reasons for which people wanted to engage in this behavior was useless. So they will insult them and abuse them. And so suicide in Ghana is a cultural artifact. And if we want to intervene, we need to work on the minds of people. And so today what we are doing, we are trying to persuade you as well. We're trying to work on you. We're trying to invite you to think through with us that your attitude towards suicide can influence the way you relate with others and your readiness to help. And so quickly, we thought that we have enough. And currently, within a sub-region, Ghana is ahead. Not only that, in fact, arguably, within Africa, the Afro region, there is a lot of traffic to Ghana because we are seriously taking suicide and suicide prevention. And so one of the things we have done is that we thought that the first thing to do, if you want to translate what you have into prevention, was to build capacity. Not only that, but also to translate your work or your works into training key stakeholders. Not only that, but to also use your work to guide advocacy. I remember we were in Parliament with the Honorable, and they posed us very strong questions. They wanted to make sure that what they are putting together has substance. And so when we came back, we sent to them a lot of documents, but we also have been relating with them for this advocacy. And I'd like you to, at this point, put your hands together for this particular committee in Parliament for taking this matter up seriously. So the first major study that is going to translate into prevention was in 2014, 2016, and these were the key leaders of this study. The objectives of this study was to identify reasons for suicidal behavior in Ghana, to understand the public attitudes towards this suicidal persons, and then public knowledge about the law, and then also understand the perspective of survivors. In fact, about 8 papers or 9 have been published out of this study. What we have found in this study is that, number one, attitude towards suicide continues to be generally negative. Number two, that if we succeed in breaking through the attitude gap, we will have opportunity to intervene strongly. And then number three, advocacy is strongly needed to push this particular issue and decriminalize attempted suicide. And so the expectation was that we're going to improve our understanding of suicide, provide useful information on it, and then provide evidence-based. And we have done that extensively. You can see in the papers outside. In fact, that particular study has given us a lot of impetus to train more students. Dr. Kwashi was part of that study at the time he was a student, and today you can see he's a senior lecturer in that area. And Dr. Kwashi is leading research in this area of research. Dr. Johnny Andoata, who will be telling us about the media, he has also completed his PhD in this area. And then the lady you can see is also completing her PhD this year in Australia, the same area in suicide. I thought that you were putting your hands together for us. And that's Dr. Johnny Andoata. Please be moving with me. Be moving with me. That's Dr. Niboye Kwashi. And I should quickly let you also know that Dr. Niboye Kwashi is the second person to have won one of the most prestigious awards in suicide prevention and research in Africa. It's called the DeLeo Research Award. The first time we won that award was in 2015, and your humble self. I was the one to win that award. And then, secondly, Dr. Niboye Kwashi. So you see, Ghana has taken the lead. And in Africa, Ghana has taken the lead in winning twice in this area. The lady you can see is now Dr. Winfred Asaredoku, who is also a suicidologist. So it started off as just one person at the time when I came with my PhD in that area, but now the number is increasing. So we began building resources in terms of a human resource to look at the gaps in certain areas so that we can pick it up. The second major study, which a part of which Dr. Kwashi has shared with you, is suicide among university students. 2022, we are just about completing that study. And this is the first dissemination. A second bigger one will come. We'll invite you, where we'll be telling you all the bigger issues in there. But today we've told you that at least about 3 out of 10 university students are suicidal in Ghana. That is not good. Africa is the youngest continent in terms of demographics. So if your young people are suicidal in the universities, your guess will be as good as mine. What do you think is happening? This study is to understand university students, provide estimates, look at gatekeepers in the university, and what we can learn out of this. And we are seeking to convince governments to set up a national suicide prevention strategy. So, putting all of this together, what we have done in the next 3 minutes that I'm going to share with you, first, gatekeeper training. We have done our best to make sure that at least we will train key stakeholders. Because once you get the stakeholders, you are sure that knowledge will distill, knowledge will be disseminated to other areas. And so first was the media. Can we see the media guys here? Is any media house? Okay, yes, put your hands together for them, they are here. The media here, we're looking at the way they report. Okay, somebody will just get a story and they will provide the entire detail about the story and how the person hung himself and the note the person left and all of that. Dr. Atta will tell you, Dr. Anjonianta will come and tell you the dangers of publication that way. So we have done training for them. And at least when we finish this training, you will see some of the publications outside. We saw that a particular publication that used to, put the splash, the gory pictures, stop doing that. We have had the impact. And again, the National Communications Authority, we're working with them on sanitizing the space. So you don't just put out materials and information just like that. Not only that, we moved to the Ghana Police. The Ghana Police is mandated to prosecute anybody who attempts suicide and survives. If you fortuitously survive, you should end in jail. So we brought the police, the criminal homicide unit, to campus. We've trained them on 2 occasions. And I'm happy to announce to you that last year, the Ghana Police Service, you saw that there were a lot of suicides occurring among the Ghana Police Service. They came to our department together with Ghana Psychology Association, Psychological Association, and Center for Suicide and Violence Research in the Department of Psychology to put together a program for them. We train Ghana Police Service persons in Accra, Ashamai, Takoradi, other places, Cape Coast that we went to. And today, the Ghana Police Service has a center, a psychosocial center that attends to police needs and psychosocial needs because of the training. Now, we have not yet expunged the criminal code, but today, nobody will have the courage, although people are attempting it. By 2013, people were vigorously being criminalized. But until now, if anybody attempts to do that, at least they call us. That we have a case like this, what do we do? And we refer them to the appropriate court. So, although the law is still there, at least to a certain degree, the law is comatose. We are only waiting for our honorable members to help us say, today the law is removed. then we know that it is comatose. For coma, one day you can come back. The law must die, you know. Not only that, we took the matter to the judges. And these are what we call security apparatuses that should work on persons who experience suicidal crisis. Because if the police writes a docket on you, it will have to go to court. And there must be a judge in there, a magistrate in there, to apply the law and prosecute you. Prosecution is the law in practice. So if the law is working, we'll prosecute you. And we did a training for 247 judges across the country. Today, judges who see this, at least, I have had several calls on judges who say, there's a case before me and I think that today we know better. Where do I refer the person? I think we have made an impact here. This is also very important. Not only that, we took the matter also to the religious bodies. Today we are very much aware that in some churches, if you attempt suicide, they will not attend your funerals. We are aware. I have seen some. That the church said that no funeral organizing. We are not organizing. We are protesting, although you are dead. So, Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic churches invited us. We reached out to about 3,500 church members of this parachurch organization in Accra and its contiguous districts, for example, Kaswa and Ashama. And this has been extremely important. In fact, one of them is here, my brother Asigri. Asigri, I see you. He works at Ghana Pentecostal Council. We'll put it together for him. They are collaborators. So wonderful on that. Then finally, we brought together traditional leaders, queen mothers, because we had the data showing that children who are getting sexually abused by their own fathers in certain areas in Ghana I don't want to mention were suicidal. One of our students has completed a thesis on this. And so we brought all the queen mothers in Greater Accra together for a workshop. The impact was heavy. The women said that actually they see cases like that. And when it happens, they say, oh, young can fear to wait, let's discuss it among ourselves as family members. And then that is it. It dies. Nothing happens to the victim. We have also taken to them. So these are the gatekeeper trainings that we have had. And then finally we had this, what we call stakeholders forum in 2017, where we brought stakeholders like we are doing today to discuss with them the way forward. At the time we proposed that we have to set up Ghana Association for Suicide Prevention to coordinate all efforts. This will include psychologists, psychiatrists, nurses, mental health workers, pastors. Today we have youth workers here in the Church of Pentecost. We have women workers here because women are at risk, men are at risk here. And we have social workers here. We have others from other organizations who are here with us. The idea is to launch one umbrella. We work together with you so that we can push this forward. And so we have pushed this very far for advocacy purposes. And today the bill is before Parliament. Before Parliament. This was the team in 2017 at the time. And so they are taking a look at this for us in Parliament to decriminalize it. Ladies and gentlemen, summarily, we can say that we need to coordinate all these efforts into 3 possible targets. And that our work generally is undergirded by data, and that the data help us to identify gaps and extending resource development to these areas. And that we have identified and trained key gatekeepers, and that we have collaborated with key stakeholders. Advocacy and stigma reduction are on the way, and that we need to coordinate all of this into the GASP launch that we are going to have today. And so the 3 targets, as I said now, are 1, that when we set up our National Association for Suicide Prevention, the GASP, it is going to coordinate all our efforts in this regard. So you wouldn't call psychology department, you wouldn't call Ghana Psychological Association, you wouldn't call Center for Suicide and Violence, you would just call GASP. and all the members are there, including parliamentarians who will be working with us. Our target too is that we want to persuade government that after this is decriminalized, we have international partners who want to work with us to help us set up Suicide Prevention Commission. The work of this commission will be to develop a national suicide prevention strategy. We don't have one, and we need one immediately because lives have been lost. Our target 3 is to collaborate with other interest groups within the sub-region to learn lessons and intervene together. And I am happy to announce to you that I am currently appointed by IASP, the International Association for Suicide Prevention, to coordinate all efforts in Africa on suicide prevention. And we have already begun that. We have Kenya now on board, we have Uganda on board, we have Zambia on board, we have Nigeria on board, we have Cameroon on board, and the number is increasing. And so pretty soon, this is going to be the headquarters for suicide prevention in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention.
Another clap for Professor Safo for that piece of work he has done over the years. He has really brought suicide and its related issues out for all of us to know. Something that wasn't known. Now, everywhere you hear about suicide and suicide prevention. Thank you so much for Safo and your colleagues for doing this for us. So today we, at this juncture, we would want to take a snack break. Right? And then we'll go out for a snack break. And then when we go, we are also encouraged to look at our exhibits on suicide and suicide prevention, and then to educate ourselves on what is going on. And then when we come back, the other purpose of our gathering would be lunch. That is launching of the Association of Suicide Prevention, and then what we call the Hope Squad. So we thank all of you for being here, and then this is the time for lunch break. Thank you very much. Snack break.
Yes, so we just want to also announce to you that we have a lunch, full lunch for you. We prepared for you. So please don't be on the rush and hurry to go. This is just snack. It's just down here for just 15 minutes, and then come back. And anything you want to hear after that, Honorable, you see, he came here very early. He's going to launch this for us. They are going to be our patrons. So please, let us not waste a lot of time. He's been here for a long time, and we really, Honorable, God bless you so much for this. And because of us, he's here. So please, step out there. When you pick the snack, the exhibits are there. 15 minutes, let us reconvene quickly. He will launch the term for us. Then we can allow him to just go and continue his business. Thank you. God bless you.
Okay, so please let's do so quickly. If you don't come back, we'd have to eat our own food. So please come back and then come and take your food. It's for you. Thank you. wanted to.